From paper to cloud to gone. The information management lifecycle. I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Cliff Madru, Vice President, Cloud Solution Architecture and Engineering at Iron Mountain. Welcome, Cliff.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what kind of work does Iron Mountain do?
So Iron Mountain, many people know us for our traditional tape, box storage, and our shredding businesses. But as of recent, we've made substantial investments in our portfolio of service offerings that enable really comprehensive solutions for solving challenge around information lifecycle management for both physical and digital information. So if you've kind of seen some of the headlines recently, we made a few billion-dollar acquisition last year in a couple different data center companies. We're getting deep into data analytics through some partnerships that we have. And we also built out our Iron Cloud solution in portfolio, which enables our customers who are going through some of this physical to digital transformation to really have a repository for their information going forward as they build out their policies.
In an age of data proliferation, what are some of the biggest challenges that organizations face?
So data growth and proliferation in general is a challenge, right? So organizations just managing the information that comes out of all of the growing sources of data and information from a risk perspective, managing security, protecting that data, managing and governing that information, understanding what policies need to be applied to their data, and being able to really meet their compliance and regulatory needs for their data. All of those things tie together in terms of many of the challenges that we see. In the world that we're very close to, our customers are typically moving from some type of a physical process to a digital process. And so really getting into the details of how do you both migrate the information, how do you deal with policy management in a digital world, how do you deal with information governance in a digital world, how do you take and access that information and ensure the appropriate protection of that data in a digital world? All of those things tie together around challenges as customers go through that evolution. So we're, really focused on helping customers, not necessarily around, some of their primary data sets, which typically are where a lot of the focus is, meaning, I'm going to move an application into the cloud, let's say. What we're focused on is the secondary data. So now that information sits in a cloud or multiple clouds, depending on how many different applications you have deployed, how do you now protect that information and ensure that you're keeping policy around both the archiving of data, by example, long-term retention of data, backup and recovery of that information. Cyber protection of that data is a very large topic that we're engaged with many customers on. How do you ensure appropriate recovery from cyber attacks? And we've really built solutions around doing all of those things and much more.
Describe the information management lifecycle, and what are some of the strategies for determining where a particular data set is in the lifecycle?
Sure. So the information management lifecycle, from our perspective, starts with the creation of that information, right? And again, that could reside in a physical asset, that could be a physical document. It could also be within new cloud-hosted application. And so once you have the creation of data, now you have to move into how do you ensure the storage and protection of that information. And then when that data needs to be analyzed, how do you appropriately offer the solutions to understand the information holistically, right? Which is a challenge in today's day and age because many customers are deploying multi-cloud. They're in a hybrid environment. They have some data in the data center. So, bringing that together under, an information governance policy, and then again, knowing where your data resides, and most important, to reduce your risk, not only protecting the data, but also being able to destroy that information when it reaches the end of its life cycle. So having secure destruction of either a physical asset that contained data that is at its end of life, or within a cloud, ensuring appropriate destruction of that information when it reaches the end of life.
So let's talk about that. With the abundance of data, indexing, and storage options, and the cost of storage dropping, is it really ever a good idea to actually destroy any of your data?
So It is a good idea to destroy data in the sense of, holding on to something that may put your business at risk. There are compliance standards that regulate what information is to be kept and how long you should keep that information and when that information does need to be destroyed. When you get into PHI and PII and, get into different types of personal information, right, there are certain instances where you have to ensure that you're able to destroy that information. There are litigation reasons that you may need to destroy information or redact information. So, when you get into those complex situations, you absolutely need to ensure that you have an appropriate destruction policy in place.
What are some of the policies that data managers should adopt as they move their assets into the cloud?
So as you move from a physical asset into, a cloud-based offering, first is chain of custody around the migration of that data becomes critical. If you're migrating, a bunch of information from a physical asset into a cloud-based solution, understanding that, the data itself hasn't been modified along the way, as that data then is, or as that system, I should say, is then flipped over to the cloud-based application, you now have a physical asset that may need to be destroyed. So ensuring that you have proper destruction set up, for that asset is also critical, making sure it's either being wiped appropriately or that, you're going to, shred and destroy that asset, depending on what it is.
Cliff Madru, Vice President, Cloud Solution Architecture and Engineering at Iron Mountain. Thank you for joining. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they want to find out more about the work that you do, how can they do that?
Sure. So you can either find me on LinkedIn, and again, just search Cliff Madru, or cliff.madru@ironmountain.com.
Sounds good. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here at ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.